moves, rune sets, partners, all that jazz. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with the guide series. We're gonna start making guides again after ages. Well, I can't even, dude. I can't even remember what my last monster guide was. But we're back, and hey, I thought it would be a cool idea to talk about Salut. Or, God, I'm just gonna butcher this man. Salad. Salad. The salad. Salad. Oh, God, that's funny. Salad. Salute. This is Salute. Today, I wanted to talk about Salute. It stopped working. Alright. I don't know why I brought that up. Is it still recording? Alright, still recording. Good. I don't know what that was about, but something stopped working. It doesn't matter. I'm not using it right now. But anyway, this is Salute. So Salute was the recent quest, not as the time of recording this video, but he was a recent, like the most recent quest breeding monster. If you don't know what those are, basically you have to breed one of the 3 specific monsters during that breeding event, and if you do, you get a key. For this occasion, you got like 15 cells each of this man for each of those 3 you got, which essentially you needed to get this monster for basically free, because you had to get all 3 of that plus clear the dungeon to get this man done, which is a bit tilting for a lot of people. But I will say this: if you did actually get the cells for that and clear the dungeon, and just get this monster, you are in a really good spot in the metagame at the moment. This man is really, 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 really good, and if you don't have him yet, I highly recommend getting him. Like me, for example, I don't have him yet, so when he comes out on sale, now in terms of the gems for like Monster Quest monsters, it seems like they only can get gotten after you the event passes. You can only really get them through purchase of like $5 to get like 50 cells or something like that, $5 or $6. I think it's worth the purchase. This monster is really, really good in my opinion, simply because he does so much and he's in a lot of good books. He has a lot of good situations about him. So power 3,377. Though it is not his main objective to do damage, he's not really a high damage dealer by any means. I will say it is possible to run him damage. Like, it's not advisable, but it could certainly, like, if someone put damage on this man on defense, I could see why they did it, because he's very, very capable of applying DOTs. His solid damage itself won't kill you. His DOTs will certainly kill you if you're not immune to them. So this man plays by, if you're not immune to his DOTs, you're gone in like 2 or 3 turns. That's how he kind of plays out. He's also really good in Kane fights and Igursis fight at the moment. I'll get to the reason why later, but I just want to tell you guys right now, he's really good in Kane fights, and he's really good in Igursis fights. Most notably Igursis fights. Igursis is a really popular pick in the whenever there's a fire monster allowable, and this guy's a very good go-to for that. Life is 41,017. This is probably one of the more tankier, reliable deniers in the game. 41k is certainly nothing to laugh about. It's at 100, so you can imagine at 130, it gets like 69. It gets 69 life for base life, and you haven't even considered like AOE effects like Zara or anything else like Team Life, whatever have you. That's a lot of life for a denier. Like, it can get really, really tanky, which is awesome. Like, that's insane. It's awesome. So life is looking pretty awesome. You can take a lot of things. Being the fact in the metagame right now, there's a lot of things that can easily cheese over, the life, like lower range lives that are like, I don't know, lower 30ks to, higher 29, 28, I'd say 27 to like 32k, like, double damage and DOTs. There just seems to be a lot of things right now in the game that insta-cheese you, or like cheese off damage, or like life prevention stuff. Like AoE evasions, what have you, and they just, like, a lot of teams are just able to function and easily just break down glass cannon teams to have really, really high base life. Like, I'd say 40, like in the 40s, is really, really good in the meta right now, just due to all these life prevention stuff like tenacities, evasion, what have you. It's just a really good base life to work around with, especially since you're a denier. This man is a denier, and he really, really appreciates the sustainability. Speed is 3,531, meaning you surpass all other deniers below the speed. This speed, in terms of a denier, speed is the most important stat. Uh, the two above stats are like they are nice, like they're not the main thing you look like in terms of a denier. When you're looking at a denier, you gotta look at the base speed. Speed is very, very fundamental in terms of the denier world. If you have a low base speed as a denier, you don't really matter. Like you don't really exist unless you have better runes than your opponent. Like at that point, it's like, okay, who has the better runes? In terms of tie speed situations, yeah, that matters too. But for the most part, if you don't have really good speed runes on, let's say, a really poor like speed tier monster, then like you can't outspeed the enemy. It doesn't really do you much good because the whole point of a denier is to go before the enemy and deny them before they deny you. If that's the other way around, that doesn't really do you any good to bring a denier because you're not going first. Therefore, you're kind of just bringing a sponge to a like a non-washed fight. You're gonna be washed. Like you're gonna go out there with your sponge in hand and be like, oh well, damn, you got the better sponge. It seems I've been sponged. So yeah, this is a really good base speed. It gives them a lot to work with, and as you can imagine, when you rank him up all the way, looking pretty good in the speed tier. Looking pretty good. His trade is Abomination and Status Caster, which is an AoE ignition, which means he starts the game off by casting Ignition on all the enemy monsters. So you basically start the game with a DOT on the enemy, which is nuts. It gets into so many other different things. Let's say you're in a situation where you just barely almost missed out the kill with your attacker. Let's say that usually happens. Sometimes you just miss out on the attacker just by a little bit, and then the attacker goes, and then you just kind of die. The enemy attacker goes, and you just kind of die. In the terms of running Saulot as your, denier, starting off with that AoE ignition, the chances of that happening are slim to none. So that's really good. It also shaves off a bit of tenacity shield or armor, whatever the enemy has. The more DOT. DOT is really good nowadays. Simply due to the fact a lot of relics in the game give you armor that cannot be removed by remove positive effects. So to be able to shave that off quickly, or like in terms of those long battles, like Igursis fights, for example. Igursis fights are notoriously long. To be able to stack DOTs on them and just get them off the field as soon as possible is really, really good. He's able to do that. Saulot is able to do that. He's really good at stopping tank fights because of his initial DOTs and his ability to stack DOTs. He's able to do quite a bit of DOTs. He's got quite a few in his kit. Really good ones. You can just stack DOTs spontaneously on a single person. You can just stack them and essentially win a fight without even having to do good base damage. Like that's what I said in the beginning. You could even like it's not recommended to run him damage, but if you do run him damage on defense, and I see that, I could understand why you did it. I could see the reason to your madness. Simply due to the fact you're like even to the extent at some point. Let's say you're running like 10s, that'll just kind of surpass the numbers, and you'll do just enough damage where the DOT will kill them, probably. Given like double damage situations and or triple hit or whatever have you. I can see why you did it. Just to let you get. But no, he's just really good at breaking walls. Essentially, he's just a good wall breaker. And he's uneven damage. He's a good wall breaker, and he's uneven damage. He's your denier, dude. Abomination, if you guys don't know what Abomination does, but Abomination prevents you from ever being possessed, bled, and or nightmares, I believe. So you're immune to all three of those things, which is why he's a good counterpick to Kayn. He's a really good counterpick to Kayn because Kayn can spontaneously kill him, simply due to the fact he can't meet his condition. He can't meet the DOT. So if he wanted, let's say, like a Kayn had to destroy your Saulot, he'd have to burn all of his. Essentially, he'd have to burn all of his extra turn skills to do so. At least 2 of his 3. It has to do that. Which means not only does he lose turns to set up on other enemies, it just took your opponent's ability to pretty much sweep that whole turn. So that's huge. Another reason why this is good, like I said before, Saulot has DOTs. He has a lot of DOTs, which means Well, he has to do those extra turn skills, those weak extra turn skills to pretty much get him to the range of chipping him. Let's say a Saulot does like he actually has a double DOTs. He actually has a burning. Is it burning poison? It is burning and quicksand. Oh, so that's actually huge. So he has a skill here called Magma Ground, which applies burning and quicksand. Let's say instead of going for a deny turn one, he went straight for that DOT. So you have a 15%, 15%, 45% plus the initial damage. You do initial damage. Keep that in mind. So if you do just enough initial damage, and the king goes for the extra turns, you'd have to go for extra turn skills, or you'd have to go for a lifesteal that turn, which would be an okay thing to do. If that actually killed Saulot, then that's really good in Kane's position. But if it doesn't, obviously, that's huge. And then you still have that DOT, and then the attacker could have probably chipped away before that too. Like, I guess it depends on the speed situation. If you're faster than Kane, you could probably chip the rest of that needed damage with your attacker, and then the DOTs will finish from there. If you knock anything down to below 45%, the DOTs finish the rest. This is really, really good. Like I said, he's really good at breaking walls. So it's really good in Kane's fights. So in short, he's just really good. There's no reason for him not to be good in Kane fights. Yeah, it can hold a staff and a trap. Now, traps are notoriously good for draining stamina. As far as I'm concerned, that's the two major ones people use, the stamina drain and the taiga trap. I recommend AoE stamina trap with a recharging relic. The problem is, though, with the trap, I can't seem to get that. That's the only trap I don't get. I get a lot of the other garbage traps, and like Pestilence. Well, I take that. People use like 3. Pestilence is the 3rd one people use. But this guy can't hold double Pestilence, so I wouldn't recommend for comps relating with him. Unless you wouldn't mind that extra 5,000. If you don't mind losing a 5,000 trap, that's what it is, in terms of damage. But yeah, I'd go with the AoE stamina. But that's really hard it's usually hard to get in terms of an RNG aspect. At least I have little luck to get it. The staff, I'd run recharge. If you don't have the drain staff, then recharge obviously counters stamina drain. Staff counters staff. If it's on defense, run an AoE stamina regen. If it's on attack, go with the revenge staff, or just like depending on the situation. If you need the regen, pick up the regen staff. If you don't need the regen, pick up the stamina drain. So that's pretty good. None of the things in skill groups 1 seem to be worth mentioning because they have a half chance to even proc, and they're just low numbers. So I don't see much of a point to talk about them. Rotten Kiss deals heavy special damage to one enemy and applies poison to one enemy. Honestly, this skill doesn't do too much besides apply an additional DOT, like just a DOT. Like he's got a lot of DOTs, like I said, but I don't see a point in running it simply due to the fact it's not on an AoE scaling. I don't think you need it, and you could probably run an attacker that does the same thing, or like a fatted. I don't think you need this skill per se. Though you may choose to run it for just that, again, an additional DOT. Let's say you're stuck in a 1v1 situation, it's just another thing for him to stack on you. And essentially you could get killed by it. So this move seems bad, but you can actually use it with the other DOTs to essentially win a 1v1 situation because it's just too much DOTs. The enemy takes like 55 in total. If you get all of his DOTs, I think that's up to like 55. He also applies nightmares too if the enemy isn't immune to any DOTs whatsoever. Oh, plus you got the ignition's like 20%, which means that's 65. If I'm going by that logic, yeah, is it 6? I would think it'd be like 65. Yeah, percent. Dude, that's disgusting. Yeah, because I thought ignition was a 15, so I was going by that, but it's not. So that's 20%, 35. 50, yeah, 60 to 6, yeah, 65 damage because he got the nightmares too here. He has a nightmare skill. Oh, plus he has bleed. So basically, so bleed 10%. I gotta count this. I feel awkward. 25%, 50%, 60%, 65. Okay, yeah, I was right. 65%. Yeah, in total, he's got that's how many DOTs. So yeah, 65%. Alright, so moving on, you guys already know about his stacking DOT. This helps him in 1v1 fights. I do recommend this skill. It's just good for 1v1 fights. There's no reason not to run it. Burning Puppets. This is his AoE possession skill. This is deny skill. Run it. It's you must go to, have to. Right now, possession's still strong in the game because you can still chain it. For some reason, they still haven't fixed that. They've had since they've had October. Like it's this chain denying as of recent has been changed, but they haven't really fixed the possession yet. You can still chain possess, and I think that's dumb. Because they wanted to kill chain. They wanted to really nerf chain deny, but it still kind of exists in the game. If you're not immune to possession, you can still get chain denied. So yeah, I run it. This is really good for Agursus matchups. If you'll notice a lot of time in the higher end of PvP, a lot of people just using Agursus. And this is one of the few like fire deniers in the game that does something besides stun. So yeah, I'd run that. I'd run it as a denier, and I'd run this AoE possession. This is good. Run Burning Puppets. Sweaty Sleep. This is a single target. Nightmares and Ignition. I would say you have the option to run it. I don't really know if you have to run it. I think it depends on the situation. Obviously, if you take the risks and because for the most part, you start out with Ignition. But if you play it right, you might not have to cast Ignition again because Ignition lasts for like what 3 turns. It actually lasts for 2. Okay, so Ignition only lasts for 2 turns. I'd say run it. I'd say run it in the event you need it. He's got an AoE bleed. I'd say run that too. And I'm thinking that like, okay, so I take that back. I actually wouldn't run Sweaty Sleep. Don't actually run Sweaty Sleep. I'd run Open Runes, Burning Puppets, Magma Ground, and then run this last skill, Fire Strings. So this is his best skill. I think this is a phenomenal skill. It applies a Mega Possession to one enemy on the enemy team. This is really good for situations where you just get Agursus the entire game. A lot of the times, too, Agursus starts the game off with Vesuvius once he's been, like, usually that's just his go-to. Whenever anyone puts him on the defense nowadays, he just seems to go for that. Or Vesuvius, which is a self-skill that applies Taunt and Skill Mirror, so whatever skill you do on him, and any of the skills he attracts towards himself, he'll reflect it back on your team. However, if you are possessed while you have Skill Mirror up, if the enemy goes for like a skill, the attack doesn't actually come back at the enemy. It comes back at you because Agursus is treated as the enemy unit. Therefore, the Skill Mirror acts whoever's on the enemy. So, since Agursus is now the enemy's ally, when he's possessed, he'll reflect anything the enemy tosses back at you. So, let's say I have a Hackster, right? I go for the AoE possession. He has Skill Mirror up. He won't actually reflect the possession back on my team. He'll actually reflect it back on his team again. So let's say the enemy has like Harden and you miss the first time, right? Well, Agursus is gonna do the AoE again, but not on your enemy team, but back at you, because again, Agursus is their unit because possession is treated as control. You now have control of that unit, and you get the benefits of that unit, obviously. So, having Skill Mirror up, just a note of reference: if you're fighting an enemy Agursus, slap that old Mega Possession on him, and if he does do the self skill, bada bing, bada boom, victory. You can just use your attacker's AoE. The enemy Agursus will do the AoE back and pretty much clear your house from there. That's usually how the situation goes when you run the Possessor. That's everything you need to really know about Saulot. Another good thing to note, another good justification, like I said in the beginning of this video, it wouldn't be a bad idea to use, I don't know if I said to use Elementium, but if I didn't, I'm saying it now. If you do decide to use Elementium, I think that's viable. Here's why I think that's viable. It's really, really good because it's in the Winged book. The Winged book, as you know, is an atrocious book. It's one of the worst books. If you don't know, I'm telling you now, Wing is garbage, my boys and gals. There's a lot of garbage in the Wing book, and this is one of the few monsters that isn't garbage, like 100% isn't garbage. Uh, so that's going for him. He's also really good because he has, I do believe he has one or two books similar to Agursis, so he has good matchups there. Uh, One problem, I guess you could say a problem with Saulot, give or take one or two here, is one, he has no control over anything that's abomination. As far as I'm concerned, abominations can bother this man for kind of free in turn, even though he could stack DOTs on him. He actually can't control them. He has no control. In terms of his realm of do abilities, he has no control over them. Like, if there's a wild, like, Zyophex crawling around the area, he actually can't do anything about it. He can't do anything out of his control of reach. He can't bother. When I say bother, I mean like deny. He can't deny. He can't say no to any abomination if they have the immune to possession trait, or they have the abomination, or like anything that has advanced possession control. He just can't do anything about it. I will say he can stack DOTs, but that's the extent. And some of his DOTs he actually can't put on the enemy, so that's huge too. Like I said before, you can't make abominations bleed, so his AoE bleed doesn't work, and his nightmares don't work. So in total, that's a 15%. That 15% could matter, but maybe, hey, for the most part, maybe it doesn't, because then you still have 50% total. So I guess it's alright in the long runs, as long as you don't die within those 2 turns, or like a turn or 2. I didn't explain his ult real quick. His ult is removes positive effects from all enemies, applies mega possession to all enemies, and applies death within 3 turns. So it's essentially, it's like mega freeze. It's like Cryotan's ult, I mean, where you're controlled for 2 turns and you die on the last turn. So yeah, it's pretty strong, pretty good. It's really good when people are using Elvira comps. I will say a lot of the time people use Elvira. So for this man to remove that and then possess everyone for 2 turns and then they all die on the last turn, pretty good. And there's not much to really complain about there. It's kind of just an instant win if the enemy is not immune to possession. That's it. That's all you need to know about this monster. Runes real quick. I'd run speed or full team speed. That it is viable. In all honesty, full team speed is viable because he has a lot of DOTs for the most part. So he can act as a sub monster, a support, or like another denier. But he's not running full speed. He's like a deep buffer monster essentially. Like so he's stacking DOTs. He's not doing really any damage nor any supportive buffs, but he's just really applying DOTs. And I think that's viable too. I think he can do that. I think that's just one of the 2 things he can do. He can either be stacking all those DOTs, or he can be possessing the whole game, or like control and or DOTs. Just essentially winning at some point. This monster's really good at winning. I will believe that. I believe this monster's really, really good. If you can get around the enemy's strat and then just come out on top. This monster just is really good in general. But that's everything you need to know about Saulot. I'm DibtheAwesome.